Hi, everyone. This is Moses Kemibaro, and this is my podcast, Pure Digital Passion. This is a really interesting interview I had back in June 2021 with a young man called Bernard Momanyi Nyagaka, an entrepreneur who basically has set up a talent platform targeting African creatives across the continent. And what's interesting about his story is that about 4 or 5 years ago, he was actually in university at the University of Nairobi in the Department of Economics, and he was studying and preparing himself for a career in banking. And somewhere along the way, he realized that a lot of the young people in the university were actually multifaceted and multi-talented. And often in Kenya, we talk about the idea of the side hustle, where an architectural student could be potentially a designer of interiors or a graphic designer or programmer. And all these different scenarios that he encountered within the school inspired him to set up a talent marketplace called Onesha Technologies. And a few years ago, if you can imagine this, within university, he taught himself how to code and he built a small platform. And within no time, he had over 2,000 students in the University of Nairobi on this platform. And over time, Bernard has managed to build a fairly good platform for affordable creative services online, again, targeting talent across the African continent. And his objective is really to put as many as 1 million creatives on this platform, allowing them to, empower themselves, to be self-employed, and most importantly, to build careers around a platform such as his. And in this interview, we'll get to hear a little bit about his backstory, where he's coming from, how he went to one of the best high schools in Kenya, Alliance, and over the years and the things he's learned as an entrepreneur, building a startup enterprise that is now actually sustaining itself and empowering young people throughout Kenya and across the continent. So thank you very much for joining us for this podcast. And again, I'm delighted for you to be here on the Moses Kemibara podcast, also known as Pure Digital Passion. So, good afternoon, Bernard. It is Moses here, and I'm so grateful for you to join us for this conversation where we're going to be talking about Onesha. Thank you for joining the interview, Bernard.
Thank you, Moses, for the invitation, and I look forward to our discussion today.
So, Bernard, I'd like to know a little bit about you, the person, the Bernard behind this business called Onesha. What you
Right.
do there, what was the inspiration, and where are you today?
Oh, great. So my name is Bernard Momanyi Nyagaka. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Onesha Technologies. Myself, I was, of course, born in Kisii. I was raised there. Obviously, in a humble family to parents who are peasant farmers. I went to school in Kisii from class 1 to class 8. I was lucky enough to pass and go to the go to the famous Alliance High School.
Alliance alumni, yeah?
After the Alliance alumni, yes.
Okay.
And I was very lucky to have very interesting interactions in that school because it brings all these bright minds from all over the country, and you're able to exchange ideas not only in class but in other places like drama, like business club, junior achievers club. Actually, that is where I got some of the skills in business. And of course, after high school, I was so passionate about getting into studying economics. Mostly, I wanted to be a banker at that time. And the reason for that is it's actually a very interesting story. James Mwangi had come to school and gave this talk about how bankers are changing the world. And I was like, oh, I want to get into that space. So I dug into how someone becomes a banker. I realized, oh, you have to do economics and all that. So I was lucky enough to get into University of Nairobi to study economics and statistics. Yeah. That's generally a brief background about myself.
Okay, now from there to Onesha, well, how did that all happen?
So in university, I was in School of Economics main campus. Main campus is in CBD, Nairobi. And when I was not in class, we used to have a lot of free time in university. I mean, you have like 2 classes a day, and the rest of the 5 hours you just loitering around. So during those 5 hours, I used to go to Chiromo campus to just go and check out what guys do in computer science, because I was very fascinated about computers that time. So I will finish classes, go to Chiromo campus, check out what guys they are building. And I got involved in a few projects here and there in what then now is called C4D Lab, which was built in partnership with, I think, Ministry of ICT and the German, I think, embassy. So I worked on a couple of projects where I got to contribute a few ideas to other existing projects that students were working on. And myself, I got inspired to also work on something on my own. And I had actually had this idea of, university, I used to observe people like students saying, I don't have money to buy a laptop, I don't have money to go and buy an extra hostel for me to stay or something, I don't have money for me to go back home with. And I figured most of these students have skills they can actually use, to earn a few bucks. So you will get like a student is in economics, yet they know how to do graphics. Some student is doing computer science, they do photography part-time. Some student is doing architecture, School of Architecture, and they're very, very good, extremely good in interior design. So I figured, why not just build a platform where these students can list their skills, and anyone who is pumped up to hire them, they can, get them. So I built a basic platform, and students started listing what they do.
So this is actually started off as a university project, right? This was your side hustle in university, it sounds like.
Yeah, university. Yeah, it was actually a university side project. So after getting a couple of students to sign on the platform, I think we had probably 2,000 students registering in University of Nairobi. We got a couple of students from JKUAT. We got a couple of students. Actually, our biggest user base was Multimedia University, because it's a multimedia and creative art school. So a lot of students have very good skills they can actually, use to earn work. So
how old is Onesha?
We actually in our fourth year.
Fourth year, huh? Okay. And you graduated? Did you graduate or did you drop out?
No, actually, I actually left campus, and it's actually a very interesting story. So when I was in campus, and Onesha had garnered a couple of users, I think that time we had like 5,000 users on the platform. We were caught in between. Students were making money on the platform, but we didn't know how to collect this money. So someone, you see, like, for example, if you're a student in ADD and you've listed your portfolio, because a portfolio, you can actually upload pictures on the platform, and someone can actually see this person knows how to do a good interior of a house.
Yeah.
So someone will call you, my name is ABCD, I'm in Mombasa, I want some renders done for my hotel, could you do something for me? Students started getting some gigs on the platform, but we didn't now have a mechanism of collecting that money.
Okay.
They were just getting gigs without us knowing. I think that time probably we facilitated around 10 million or so worth of online work to students, but we never knew.
Wow.
So we came across this application that was being run by an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization. So in short, it's called EO. EO runs. It's one of the largest organizations in the world that has a collection of the world's brightest entrepreneurs. So that it has like 18,000 people in the network, and they run this program for students who run businesses. And that time, I happened to find myself in Strathmore looking at some posters, and I came across one of their posters. I thought, okay, this is something interesting I could apply. I mean, we can actually win because we have an actual business in campus. So we applied. I was in third year at that time. We applied with the idea, and the idea was connecting students to paid work. And we actually got to compete in the local regionals. And Onesha won that competition, and we went to Bangkok for 3 weeks to represent Nairobi University in that competition.
Wow.
Now, interestingly, when I was in Bangkok, I was like taken back. Like, students from all over the world are doing these amazing things. Like, a student in second year is running a robotics business that has a contract with the Thailand government. Some student in UK is running this machine learning platform that has like 10,000 customers on it. So I was so inspired. When I came back, I think my mind was not in class anymore.
You saw the possibilities.
the possibilities. So I just left university tentatively.
So you took a sabbatical.
Yeah, I took a sabbatical.
Excellent. This is so cool. Go on. And
Mm.
then, so you went full time on
Yes.
Onesha.
So I went full time in Onesha, and that time actually we were lucky enough to get. That time we were based in Strathmore.
Mm-hmm.
Strathmore has this incubation program for young entrepreneurs. I think it's called iLab. Now it's
Yes, I
called
know.
IBIS Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So we were there for quite some time. I think for 6 or so months. And while we were there, now with that time we had transitioned to. Now it was I think around a year or so when I left school. And the business was doing quite well. We were getting some money from these students who were getting gigs. And that time we transitioned now fully into now professionals. We didn't figure out how to collect money from students because they were a bit dodgy. So we figured the best way now to monetize the actual platform is now get professionals who are able to deliver professional work to businesses, whereby now we have active sales team and someone actively recruiting professionals to the platform. We didn't want to build a platform where you just sign up and then you wait for work. We had to vet you. We had to look at your work. We had a lot of coffee meetings with these professionals because we wanted to have a personal interaction with these freelancers. Like, we have to know you, we have to know your work, we have to speak to a couple of your customers. We wanted you to feel part of the Onesha family. That's why even nowadays Onesha is called the Onesha Creative Network. Because we wanted to be the largest community of freelancers in the African market. So that time, while in Strathmore gave us this program and told us, but there guys, there's a Norwegian fund that is launching in Kenya in a few months, and they're looking for startups to fund. They want to connect African startups with foreign funding, especially funding from the Nordics region. So the Nordics is mostly Scotland, Ireland, all those countries. So we applied, and from around, I think, 300 applicants, Onesha was one of the 12 companies chosen to take part in the program. And from the 12 companies that were to take part in the program, they were to choose actually 5 to fund. So this program was called Pangea Accelerator. I think you can put a link to the readers.
How do you spell that?
Out. Pangea, like separating of continents. Pangea.
Okay, got it.
Separating of continents.
Yes.
So we applied, and we took part in the accelerator program from September 2018 to, I think, December 2018. And the 12 companies that were to take part, they were to choose 5 companies to give 50K each. That is USD, 5 million Kenya shillings each. And Onesha was lucky to be among the 5 companies.
Fantastic.
So we got funding from Pangea that time, and they have been supporting us ever since. Onesha has now grown into a Pan-African platform that seeks to connect the 40 million SMEs in Africa to 15 million freelancers. That is our mission. We want to empower at least all these 40 SMEs that have a need to have something done without having someone full-time, to find that talent within Africa. Because Africa has already 15 million people who, especially young people who have the potential to do this work online. So we are talking about content creators, social media marketers, email marketers, graphic designers, virtual assistants, all these guys. And they're able to do work ranging from $5 to as high as $10,000. So additionally, we also want international customers who want now to outsource to Africa to also tap into this pool of young people who are super pumped to have access to a global opportunity. So we are extremely committed to ensuring that the freelance community we build in Kenya and Africa not only has access to Kenyan and Pan-African opportunities, but also global. Like, currently, we've now grown to 300 plus customers in 10 countries, and we currently have around 5,000 freelancers servicing all these customers. So we have, in the network, we have businesses that spend as low as $5 to customers who spend to as high as $10,000 per month on various services. And we are very, very grateful for that.
And so what happens, the way the business model is structured, you make a small commission or something on the transaction? on the generation of the business, right?
Yes. So suppose a company in Kisumu wants to procure a website design, and their budget is say $300. So they state that on the platform. The platform picks that up, analyzes the budget, and using the technology we have built, it's able now to match that request with someone in the back office. Our marketplace is currently not open because of various reasons. It's a bit controlled. That means we actually have people who also look at these requests from customers. And then once you state the budget, the system looks at it. Also a PM looks at it, a project manager looks at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do now either a markup or a commission based on the type of client we're engaging. So it could be a 20% on top of the $300 or 20% off the $300.
Okay. Have you had any challenges onboarding, both businesses and also the freelancers on the platform? Are there any challenges that you face with doing that?
Yeah, we've had a couple of challenges actually onboarding a few categories in freelancing, especially finding the right mix of people who have certain skill sets. An example is you might find an extremely good graphic designer. Like this guy is like top notch. They can work in WPP standard, but they don't have good communication skills with customers, right? They don't have good time management skills. They don't have good project management skills. So you caught in between training this person to have all these other skill sets while also ensuring that they still have their skill set. So balancing teaching these people. I don't know whether it's a matter of ego or pride, but they feel like you don't have to tell them anything. You know what I'm saying? Like I think the listeners probably know what I'm saying. So you want this person to actually deliver work to customers, but they have a bit of ego that is preventing them from doing good work. So working with those people has been a challenge. Of course, we try to accommodate them because they're freelancers, and they also train our young creatives in terms of skill sets. Another challenge we've had with freelancers is their availability, in terms of, Africa right now is now getting into online work. Someone is not used to staying on their laptop 24/7, because you might find we've matched a designer with a client in California, but the time difference does not do them favor. That means the client might message, a graphic designer at 12 midnight. But now this graphic designer sees this work probably the next day, at the end of the next day. So trying to train our freelancers to see how they can adjust their schedules to be available for various client types has been a bit of a challenge. So it's one of the key things that we're working on as an organization. But generally, working with freelancers has been great. I think we currently have one of the largest communities of freelancers in the African market, and they're all excited to work with us. At least 30% of them are active, in terms of 30% of them get active work month on month or quarter on quarter. In terms of onboarding businesses, I think the challenges have been few, only that some of these organizations, you have to pitch to them work, yet you're running an online platform. So
you actually have to sell Onesha to them, right? That's what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. You have to sell Onesha to them. So it puts you in competition with, of course, other providers who are pitching.
So how do you, so who do you target? Who's your typical customer? What sort of businesses come to you?
So we mostly target small and medium businesses. These small and medium businesses, they need to be spending at least $100 to $1,000 a quarter on various digital services. And ideally, they're looking at using that budget to outsource, not to hire someone full-time. And probably they've had, mostly actually the people who come to us have had a bad experience before working with other freelancers. So when they come to Onesha, they have this amazing customer service, amazing designers. So they find it very easy for them to work with the type of structure we have put in place as Onesha. So Onesha does not target blue chips, which is meaning like established companies that have access to top tier agencies or mid-tier agencies. We normally don't work with that type of customer base unless they come to us for specific services that are not able to be executed by agencies. Things like reports and all that they don't have to spend money on agencies.
So this is a very interesting question I've not even asked you. So what are the services that are offered on Onesha? I mean, from what I could see on your website, it looked more like digital creative services, but maybe you can correct me. But what are the services that Onesha actually offers?
So we we've been largely focused on digital creative services because we wanted to master what each of those services entails. We didn't want to go broad like other marketplaces. Of course, it has taken them years, like 15 years for them to get the likes of Upwork, Fiverr. It has taken them like 10 years before they have like 1,000+ categories. So us starting with digital creative services ensure the team is focused in finding out what is required for each of those services. And then over time, actually this year, we're now planning now to expand the platform to include non-creative services, things like data analysis, hardcore software development, virtual assistants, and all these other services that are offered virtually.
So you're starting to break out into these new areas now.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say in your space you have any competition? I mean, do you think there are any competitors, either locally or regionally, or I know globally, of course, you've talked about what Upwork and Fiverr, but I mean, do you see any competition within the African space?
Obviously, there's a lot of competition in this space. Not like a lot in terms of there are so many companies that want to get into that space. Kenya, we have a couple of platforms. We have our very good friends at Kuhasol who are doing amazing work with software engineers. Of course, in Nigeria, we have one of the platforms we respect called Bookings Africa. In South Africa, we have another good platform called Jobs from Zanzi and a couple of other platforms. But in Kenya, honestly, I think Onesha is probably top 3 in freelancing platforms. If you search on Google top three freelancing platforms in Africa, Onesha is number 3 in that search. So we currently, I think Onesha is almost now becoming the number 1 freelancing platform for freelancers and for outsourcing services.
So obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic. COVID-19 happened almost 15 months ago. In Kenya, it has been especially painful for many people, but I know that one of the things we've seen quite visibly is that all of us became digital. We're doing this conversation over Zoom. You're probably at home, I'm at home. But what have you seen as a result of COVID-19, especially around the SME space, in terms of the adoption of your services?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there are a couple of companies that have adopted this online work thing, especially individuals who own their own businesses. Like they don't have like a management structure. These are just individuals who just want to do something during this pandemic. It could be someone who's running their own restaurant, someone who's starting their own online business. So the bigger part of the population that has now shifted towards outsourcing are those solo entrepreneurs, like people who own their own businesses, because a bit of established businesses had a bit of online presence, so they could actually extend whatever they were doing to the COVID season. But these solo entrepreneurs initially didn't have these online services, or they had a full-time job. Now during COVID, they lost their job. Now they're doing this thing full-time. They're massively spending time online. And I mean, they're massively spending a lot of time in various platforms marketing their businesses. So we are seeing a lot of interesting businesses, mostly in online fashion, online food ordering, delivery services. We're seeing a couple of smaller logistics companies putting up shop. There's a lot of on-demand services being built around beverages and liquor and all that. So those are the key categories that we've seen spending massively on these online platforms.
And they're coming to you for the talent to actually build these platforms for them.
Exactly, yes. They're coming to us now to offer this range of services. So an example is we have a lot of now, I think we have a lot of smaller businesses that have now decided to fully now move into e-commerce. So this person, they come to you for an e-commerce website, and then they say, okay, I think with your talent pool, I can also utilize you, a social media guy from you. Okay, now that I have a social media guy, I think I have a shoot next week where I can actually utilize one of your photographers to come and take shots of my food. After that, of course, you require someone to do the distribution on ads. They also spend. So we are seeing an average spending power of around $1,000 for a typical new business that wants to move now online fully, at least per quarter.
Okay, brilliant. And as you move forward, and I mean, obviously, people are starting to use digital services more as the consumers are becoming increasingly digital. I mean, have you seen a massive spike in terms of overall revenue? Is it steady growth? What are you seeing around the impact on revenue for yourselves?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Onesha itself is in the middle of fundraising because we're experiencing massive growth in the business. We are growing at least 50 to 60% month on month in terms of revenue.
Wow, that's very impressive.
Yeah, so that is largely driven by the influx of these services we're getting from all these companies. And we are currently running a couple of experiments that have also led to that spike. I mean, we've been giving a couple of free services to SMEs, of course, freemium basis. We give you something for free, and then once you're extremely happy with that service, we of course want you to stay with the service. That has also led to a spike in revenue on our side. So generally, I think freelancing platforms have benefited fully from this pandemic. Of course, our heart goes out to the people who have been affected, but we are grateful.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. But I think, what they say is that your business has arrived at the right time. It's the concept and the model is appropriate for the times that we're living in, which I think is excellent. You're helping SMEs, you're helping small businesses, you're helping freelancers to achieve, revenue during essentially tough times. So that's brilliant. I'd like to ask you another question. So, in your sense, I mean, we're now in Africa. We're now in a digital, digitized context around work and the future of work, which we can all see now is digital because I haven't sat in my office in 15 months and I'm still working. So we now know that it's possible not to sit in an office, but work gets done. When you look at this space and what you're doing in the next 2 to 5 years, what does that look like for you? And before I forget, maybe as you can drop into that, you mentioned something about trying to raise funds and what you're looking for there. Maybe you can also touch a little bit on that. But the next 2 to 5 years, and then also maybe tell us a little bit more about this fundraising requirements. Have you ever had to raise funds before, and what are you looking for going forward?
Yeah, so in terms of, I'll start with the funding question. We've actually raised funds before, which is of course when you're having an engagement with Pangaea, you are not just finishing the program and then they give you a check. You have to go through a process and for them to look at your numbers, if this model is scalable, how your metrics, how your unit KPIs, what is your average spending per customer when you're acquiring these customers. If you're putting money right now, what is the likelihood of us to exit in 5-6 years? So the fundraising experience in Kenya, I would say, is how do I answer this question without sounding weird? The fundraising process for, let me say, Kenyans, what is the right word to use? Help me out here. The fundraising experience, let me say, of expert founders is a bit faster compared to Kenyan, because much of this capital that is coming into the Kenyan market is coming from overseas. So of course, if the capital is coming from overseas, it will ideally have a bias towards people who are coming from those countries. If I went to Stanford and I came to Kenya to establish a company here, I'm more likely to raise money from Silicon Valley because Silicon Valley is largely funded by Stanford, alumni. So it's not something we can actually control because it's a free market. The only thing that we have to do as Kenyans is build stories around our businesses, build businesses that are actually scalable, build a business where in 10 years you can actually say, my business is making $100 million worth of annual revenues, which is something that we want to do as Onesha. Now tying that into what we see Onesha becoming in 5 years, we want Onesha to build various multi-channel platforms where online work can be distributed. So this involves building various, like currently we're building a subscription platform for graphic design that is super affordable compared to agencies. That is one platform. We are building a platform where businesses can actually buy once-off services. We're building platforms where freelancers themselves can onboard their own customers to their platform and the system manages for them. So what we're looking at is building these multi-channel digital assets and digital platforms that any SME can plug into to access this talent pool. We don't believe in building just one platform where everything can be accessed. Africa is diverse, and for us to address these diverse needs, we need to diversify how we acquire our customers. So what we want to Onesha to be in 5 years is to be the largest operator of freelancers and remote workers for the Pan-African market, serving both African SMEs and a bit of international customers. We want to own that market as a business.
I think that's fantastic, because let's be honest, the future of work is that people are not, can no longer wait to be employed in the conventional sense. Apply for a job, get your CV in, and sit and wait for something to happen. I think we have a situation today where we see that everyone, has a side hustle and is doing something in addition to their day job. And I think also during the pandemic, we've seen in Kenya that many people lost their jobs and are now relying on platforms like yours and basically freelancing to support themselves. So a lot of people have really gone into a mode where they're essentially independent consultants, so to speak, and they're out in the market doing what they need to do. So I think that's a wonderful vision. I think it's a very compelling vision, especially with the Pan-African agenda, and I think I'd love to see that come to fruition in the next few years. And maybe just my last question, or rather my last parting question would be, are there 3 things that you'd recommend to businesses and also maybe freelancers that they should look for when it comes to looking at a platform like Onesha from your perspective? What are 3 things that you'd recommend to, shall I call it, the stakeholders who would use Onesha as a platform, or just the general, shall I call it, the digital workspace that you're offering through this platform?
So my top 3 things that I would recommend to freelancers who are looking at using platforms like Onesha is, number 1 is you need to be extremely sure about the one skill you can actually deliver consistently to, say, 100 businesses. You have to know what that skill is.
That's mastery, right? You need to be masterful of that skill, huh?
100%. You have to master that skill. If it's graphic design, if you are a graphic designer for NGOs, master how to do the best graphics for NGOs in the African market. So that now when someone sees your work, they know, that work was done by Moses. That work was done by Bernard. That is number 1. Number 2 is to know your pricing points for these services. You need to understand who your customer is for you to know price A does not apply to customer X. Price B does not apply to customer Y. So you need to know because when you go online, you're going to face a lot of inquiries from customers from different parts of the world. So being conscious of how you price your services is key in actually having a successful freelance career, because sometimes you might find yourself either overpricing or underpricing. So you need to be very conscious of how you price. The last tip for freelancers is you need to not only be part of a platform, but also seek to be part of a community that has been built by that platform. So if for example, if it's Onesha, signing up to Onesha, don't be a name in a database, right? Ensure you show up to events organized by companies like Onesha. Ensure you take up in webinars that companies like Onesha put in place. ensure you also take part generally in the conversation, be it on Twitter, be it on Facebook Live, be it on Instagram Live, and all these platforms. What that does for you is it builds an actual brand identity for you as a person, because freelancing is about you. It's about more of how a customer knows you to deliver service, right? Because if people know you as Bernard or as Moses, they are more likely to associate you with a set of services if you market yourself well enough on any of these platforms.
I have to extend that question because I think you gave such wonderful answers for the freelancer perspective. What about the SME perspective? What are the three things that you'd recommend or suggest to them when they look at working with a talent marketplace like yours?
So for SMEs, what I'll recommend is number one is be open to trying out different ways to outsource these services, because trying out different ways exposes you more to other ways that your business can be more efficient. That means you might be spending 4 hours per day doing something that a freelancer somewhere can do it in 30 minutes, right? That has saved you a massive amount of time that you can actually put somewhere else. Take an example, if you run a restaurant and the entire day you are designing posters on, say, Canva, and that time you could have spent it, upselling something to your customers. Using platforms like Onesha, you have a dedicated graphic designer who does everything for you and you run your own business. You only get to know about such opportunities when you are open to trying out these platforms. Number two is for you to successfully use platforms like Onesha that are mostly reliant on delivering digital service or creative services. Your business itself has also to, let me say, massively use digital media in general. Because if you're procuring a service that is creative in nature, that has to be communicated to your audience. So that is where when we do matching of matching you with some talent that you've requested, we always encourage you to view that person as someone who can help you build up your online presence. So being conscious that I want to outsource long term for me to achieve a certain business objective is very, very important for the business owner. And lastly, of course, is budgeting well. Like if you are a business and you don't have any budgets to spend on, say, things like outsourced marketing or outsourced design or outsourced consultancy, for example, technically you'll go to these platforms without having an idea of how much you're spending, because you might be ripped off, or you might just throw money in the air for the sake of spending it on an outsourced service. So having a budget and saying, this quarter I want to spend $1,000 on services XYZ, and I want to go to Onesha compared to Hustle, compared to Upwork, so that I'm able to make the right decision on which platforms I'm able to work with based on my budgets.
Fantastic. Bernard, that was awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the future of your business and where it goes. And I think the future looks bright, and there's a lot of potential ahead for the future of digital work using Onesha.
I appreciate it, Moses. I look forward to having this conversation again when we have more time. And I wish all the best to the listeners and the readers.
Thank you.